Hello, everyone. It's nice to see you back. Or maybe I can't see you, but I know you're there. Hello, and this is Jim Ransom with another episode of Morning Jim. We're sitting in the midst of some rainy, cold weather here in western Pennsylvania, but that shouldn't make any difference. My lights still work, and so does my iPad. I promised last week to read something of my own, and I'll start off that way. But a listener suggested that I include some poetry from some other women poets of the last century. Especially, she was interested in hearing Anne Sexton and Elizabeth Bishop. I always want to learn something myself, and so why not please my listeners at the same time? And so I did a little research and came up with what I think are some excellent examples of those two poets. Here's a poem I wrote 2 years ago. It has had two titles, Early Lesson and Ghosts. You can take your choice of which you like the best after I'm through reading it. Many years ago, Nana Daisy said that her friend gave up the ghost last Sunday. And then not long after, when she discarded an ancient electric mixer, it finally gave up the ghost. The boy in me wondered what ghosts ate. Must they be fed noodles and meats? Did electric ghosts make the mixer go? I knew my ghost must like ice cream, apples, and candy. Burdened now by age and detritus of degrees, I'm reminded of those old questions, of ghosts, spirits, Geist, spiritus, the essences of life, making the kidney strain the blood, the liver's manifest duties oversee, and the teeth bite. Sophisticated now, I see Nana's mixer dies only by analogy. But what of the elephant, the lobster, or the priest? Life exists only while the ghost, the spirit, stays in place and is pleased by its corporeal habitation. The ghost decides what suits it, is my guess. And death, who comes when she will come, is when the ghost, perhaps displeased with books, diet, sermons, bad news, or television choices, oozes away to another, more hopeful realm. I hope that makes you smile. We need to look at serious life and death questions with a sense of humor, don't we? Now then, let's take up the case of Anne Sexton. She was a rising star in the firmament of poetry 75 years ago. She shared some of the same problems as Sylvia Plath, a contemporary who lived in London and took her own life. We've covered some of her poems in past sessions. Anne Sexton was hospitalized for depression on at least 2 occasions, and I don't think there's any doubt that she was thinking about Sylvia Plath when she wrote many of her poems. She wrote a lot about death. So I'm going to start out reading you an Anne Sexton poem called With Mercy for the Greedy. This is she says, for my friend Ruth, who urges me to make an appointment for the sacrament of confession. And the poem is in the form of a letter to her friend. Concerning your letter in which you ask me to call a priest, and in which you ask me to wear the cross that you enclose, your own cross, your dog-bitten cross, no larger than a thumb, small and wooden, no thorns. This rose, I pray to its shadow, the gray place where it lies on your letter, deep, deep. I detest my sins, and I try to believe in the cross. I touch its tender hips, its dark-jawed face, its solid neck, its brown sleep. True, there is a beautiful Jesus. He is frozen to his bones like a chunk of beef. How desperately he wanted to pull his arms in. How desperately I touch his vertical and horizontal axes, but I can't. Need is not quite belief. All morning long I have worn your cross, hung with package string around my throat. It tapped me lightly as a child's heart might, tapping secondhand, softly waiting to be born. Ruth, I cherish the letter you wrote, my friend. I was born doing reference work in sin and born confessing it. This is what poems are. With mercy for the greedy, they are the tongue's wrangle, the world's portage, the rat's star. Well, Anne Sexton won the Pulitzer Prize for the book of poetry in which that poem was found. It was called Live or Die. That made her famous. She was a beautiful, chain-smoking, talented, sexy woman and death-obsessed. She sometimes called herself the living Sylvia Plath. That should have told us quite a bit. And then she published 2 books right after the book that won her the prize. Her next 2 books were both bestsellers. She was famous, but her tendency to depression eventually got the best of her, and she ended in suicide at the age of 49 years. Let's move on to a less threatening poet, Elizabeth Bishop. She and Anne Sexton were total opposites in so many ways. She was born in 1911, and her father died when she was just a year old. She lived with her mother until age 5, at which time the mother had to be institutionalized for mental illness. She then moved in with her maternal grandparents in Nova Scotia. And then, finally, she was taken in by her father's family in Massachusetts. There might be a story there because I'm sure the grandparents in Nova Scotia hated to let her go, but they knew that the other grandparents in Massachusetts were very wealthy, and they wanted the best for Elizabeth. She went to a private school and then to Vassar, where she became active in poetry circles. She began writing poems when she was just a young girl before college. She traveled extensively throughout her life, supported by family money. She began publishing poems in the New Yorker and in several books, but did not get much recognition until the 1970s. Here's one of her poems. It's called Filling Station by Elizabeth Bishop. Oh, but it is dirty. This little filling station, oil-soaked, oil permeated to a disturbing overall black translucency. Be careful with that match. Father, wears a dirty oil-soaked monkey suit that cuts him under the arms, and several quick and sassy and greasy sons assist him. It's a family filling station, all quite thoroughly dirty. Do they live in the station? It has a cement porch behind the pumps, and on it a set of crushed and grease-impregnated wickerwork. On the wicker sofa, a dirty dog, quite comfy. Some comic books provide the only note of color, of certain color. They lie upon a big, dim doily draping a tabaret, part of the set. Beside, a big hirsute begonia. Why the extraneous plant? Why the tabaret? Why, oh, why the doily? Embroidered in daisy stitch with marguerites, I think, and heavy with gray crochet. Somebody embroidered the doily. Somebody waters the plant. Or oils it, maybe. Somebody arranges the rows of cans so that they softly say, "Esso, so, to high-strung automobiles." Somebody loves us all. Well, that's an interesting poem full of detailed observations, which is what Elizabeth Bishop was probably best known for. And I wanted to tell you that a tabaret is a small table for odds and ends. I had to look it up. I'm sure many of you already knew that. This poem has a humorous twist and a lot of descriptions, doesn't it? Bishop was very good at that. She only wrote about 101 poems in her entire life. She was constantly revising and improving them. Probably a good idea for all of us who want to be poets. I listened to her read one of her poems. It's on the internet. And I have to say it was pretty lifeless. I think her poem should be read by someone else, to be honest. Not necessarily me, but she got most of her recognition as a poet late in life. She was appointed to the Harvard faculty in 1970. And oh, by the way, she did not commit suicide. She died a natural death in her late 70s or early 80s. Okay, well, we've covered two extremely talented female poets in this session, Anne Sexton and Elizabeth Bishop. They're both gone now, but they're both still worth reading, and their work is readily available in libraries. And remember this from W.H. Auden, who was writing about W.B. Yeats. Time that is intolerant of the brave and innocent, and indifferent in a week to a beautiful physique, worships language and forgives everyone by whom it lives. I hope that's true, because these ladies deserve to be remembered. Well, I'll let you go for this week, and I hope to see you again next week. I have no idea, as usual, what I'm going to read, but it'll be something of interest to me, and I hope to you. Until then, goodbye, and I hope you'll have good weather.